All right, what's up, guys? Chuck and Nick here. We got a nice little Wednesday slate. We have a couple big pieces of injury news, but we should be able to navigate it all right. The big one, Jason Tatum's already ruled out, turned his ankle last night. He finished last night's game, but he's going to be out today. But we do have Kristaps Porzingis back and Al Horford resting today. So it looks like Sam Hauser is going to slide into the starting lineup with the rest of their usual guys. We'll see if we can find some value there. Paul George is questionable with the illness, and then Donovan Mitchell, huge piece of news. He's questionable with an illness. They're playing Utah. I usually lean towards Donovan Mitchell plays when he's Q, but maybe if he's actually sick, then it's a little different situation. If he is out, looks like we're going to get Craig Porter chalk, which we love Craig Porter on this show, and it's the first game, so we should get that news before the stream ends, hopefully. Nick, what else do we have today?
Yeah, you already mentioned Paul George. I think the interesting thing with Mitchell, I agree. Usually when he's questionable, he plays, but usually we don't get word from the coach. Like Craig Porter will start if Mitchell is out. Like usually when we get that bit of news, it turns out that the guy ends up ruled out. He did miss shoot around with said illness against his former team here. You think this would be a game he'd want to get up for if he can, but I mean they're not going to force him to go here if he can't. So I lean to him not playing. The good news is that is a 7 o'clock Eastern game. We should have that news soon, and then we can kind of talk through it at that point. But yeah, really good slate tonight, man. 10 games. We already have some nice value opening up, and there's a lot of good payups too that are low owned, which is always appealing.
Yeah, and then what else do we have? We don't have any other huge pieces. Mark Williams is still
Butler's
out.
out. Butler's out. Jimmy Butler.
Oh, Butler's out. Okay, I missed that one. And so Tyler Herro's been back for a few games. We'll
Mhm.
see if we can go right back to him. And then this was so weird for me to see in my exposures, but since Jericho Sims is out, I was getting Taj Gibson ownership, which is hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at 3K flat on DK, I certainly get it. When he's on the floor, I mean, I don't know, he's old, but at the same time, I mean, it's not like he's not involved. He'll be under the hoop. We haven't seen him play more than 5 minutes yet this year. What it's really doing is forcing Tibbs to finally start Isaiah Hartenstein, which he seems so adamantly against. So with Sims and Mitchell out now, you could feel pretty good about the Hartenstein minutes. So I think on sites where you could play two centers, or he's power forward eligibility on, or he has power forward eligibility on FanDuel, he looks good. But I mean, yeah, Gibson, can't say I feel great about it, but at the same time, I mean, he's the backup center now.
Yeah, and like you said, flat 3K, and so we do need some fantasy points. If he puts up like 7, we're not exactly
It's
happy
nice.
about that. But if he just does like even a 14, 15, and we get the rest of the spots right, especially on this huge slate, there's going to be some low owned payups that we want to get to,
Right.
then it could be pretty good. So let's go ahead and let's just start with the guards. And right at the top, we have Luka Doncic playing against the Clippers, pulling, I guess, only 12 and 14%. I actually thought it was going to be a little bit higher, but is this probably our favorite pay up today?
I mean, if we're paying up all the way, like north of 11K, I think it's hard not to like Luca here. I know we also have Embiid, but tougher matchup for him against Gobert and Towns. He should still be Embiid, but Luca, yeah, historically great against the Clippers. I mean, the defense is going to be a little bit softer as well if Paul George is out, and it really hasn't mattered at all for him. And we're also getting Kyrie out, so like he just checks all the boxes here for a Luca ceiling game. I like him a lot. I think if I can afford him, I will. I think the only issue in getting to him is there are a lot of good guard value options today. We also have the Celtics in that mid range. I really like Derek White again. Don't mind getting to some Drew Holiday. But yeah, if Mitchell's out, it's going to be tough not to go to Porter. So it's just like, I don't know. It's just such a loaded position. The one thing that maybe keeps you off Luca is that. But I think if Mitchell's out, we do see that ownership climb a bit on Luca, even though Craig Porter would probably become the most popular guard on the slate.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And we have an early comment in the chat here. Wendell Carter is back and starting for the Magic. And so we'll have to see. Paolo Banchero has been fantastic with Fultz and Carter out. It shouldn't affect too much. I don't think we were going to be that interested in Goga today anyway.
No.
Um, I'm not sure we're going to get to Wendell Carter first game back. He didn't really tend to play a lot of minutes anyway, even before he got injured.
Yeah, good player, but yeah, he's a wait and see for me. We weren't treating Jaw with a wait and see last night, which was good. He went off, but this is a different situation. It's not a good matchup for him either here against Bam, one of the lowest total games on the slate, and it locks early. So in locking in value, we're kind of limiting ourselves if things open up. So pretty easy not to touch Wendell Carter today. Just don't use Koga
Mhm.
or for the foreseeable future.
I will say you gotta love the Magic putting their starting lineups out like 2 hours before lock. They're the only team in the NBA that's good about that, and I love
Yeah.
them for it.
No, I do too, man. It's awesome, and yeah, it's goofy. Like I get there's gamemanship and stuff, but like I don't know. Like you, even if you don't know the exact starters, you know who's going to be in the rotation for the most part. It's really not like you're game planning around like whether or not Sam Hauser is starting. Like if you're an opposing team, it's just goofy. Like these guys think they're smarter than they are sometimes.
Yeah. And then we have another comment. Jalen Smith is back for Indiana. Miles Turner was questionable. It sounds like he's going to play. And so we don't even
Mm,
have Isaiah Jackson in the model anymore after being the 80% owned guy on the previous slate.
that's
Jalen
crazy.
Smith, I mean, 4K and 3,900 center only. Is this a value spot we should be thinking about?
I mean, if Turner were to be ruled out, yeah, he is available to play. I mean, it's not insane. It's a pretty good matchup here, but again, um, and you've said this well before in the past too. If you're locking in value in the early games, it kind of limits what you're able to do
Mhm.
as things open up as the slate moves on. I'm more comfortable kind of paying up for some of these guys in the early spots. There are a lot of 7 o'clock games tonight, though. But yeah, first game back for Smith. I would say if Turner was out when he was starting, he'd be a smash. Like I'd like him as much as Hartenstein or even more. I know Dwight Powell's going to be popular as well. I probably feel
Mhm.
better about Smith in the absence of Turner, but Turner's back, so I guess he's viable, but really not something I'm rushing to right now. Again, it's just tough to lock in that early value off the bench.
And you mentioned Dwight Howell. I want to take a look at this just because Rashawn Holmes was min priced, and we mentioned him on the show. We said if he was starting at min price, he was good. If he was off the bench, he might still be okay. Um, he put up what like a 7 or an 8 actually in the last game,
Yeah,
and Dwight Powell. I didn't see what his ownership was, but it was less than Rashawn Holmes, even though Dwight Powell was starting. And it looks like Dwight Powell 41% on FanDuel at 3,800,
yeah.
projected for 22 minutes. I mean, he has power forward eligibility, so if we're
That's
playing on FanDuel today, is this a pretty big? Is this a big deal?
Yeah, I think it's just because he's so cheap, and there's really nothing sub 4K we feel great about. I think if we get more of that value to open up for Cleveland, then maybe that ownership goes down. Right now, I really like. I know we're talking about guards, but here we are on the front court. But I really like
Yeah.
Jared Allen. I really like Hartenstein. They're both power forward eligible. I think you could play all three of those guys in like low risk cash lineups, but. Um, yeah, I think it's just the price more than anything. It is a high total game. You only really need like 15 to 20 fantasy points out of him if he affords you something like Luca or gets Kawhi and Harden into your lineup with I don't know, like a Jalen Brown or something like that. It just helps open things up. And again, I do think the floor is higher for him than someone like Holmes, who also
Mhm.
only has center eligibility on FanDuel. So that dual eligibility is rarer on FanDuel than it is on DK. You also don't have that utility spot. So we do see the field really value that heavily, even on these bigger slates.
And Courtney A. Parker in the chat, should you rank the OF index by price range or just by positions? I mean, I think you should do it by everything. You know, we go through positions on the show, I think, because it's a little bit easier.
Mhm.
But if when I typically play with the price sliders, it's if I'm last guy in and I need to
Exactly.
decide on someone and just see, like, is there a clear player the model prefers, say for like, I don't know, 7,200 on DraftKings. Like today, Drew Holiday, Miles Turner, Jamal Murray. And so in this case, I mean, if I had 7,200 left, last guy in, I'd probably just plug in Drew Holiday and just keep it as simple as possible. But we were jumping around a little bit. We had a couple comments, so let's
Mhm.
get right back to the guards. We mentioned Luca, and there's something about super paying up for these guys on a 10-game slate because it's very likely that a lot of these guys in the 8 to 9K range, like someone's going to have big games, right?
Right.
It just Luca, we know, is more likely to have a big game, and so we're not really guessing on these like lesser owned guys down here. But who should we be taking a look at first?
Yeah, I mean, I will say Mitchell. I don't think he plays, but if he's in, he's probably my favorite pay up. Um, I don't know. Yeah, he's sick, whatever, but it's a really soft matchup against Utah. You have no Garland, you have no Mobley. It's a paced up matchup against a soft defense. He just checks all the boxes for me there. Harden, I know the price is up, but again, he's not going to be owned right now. If Paul George ends up sitting, he's going to be a major priority for me. And I'm definitely getting to a lot of Derek White. I think we see a decent game out of Drew Holiday here. His usage has been down this season. He hasn't been shooting the ball as well. White's actually been the better producer in terms of fantasy. But yeah, I think the field is kind of recognizing that to a point. On DK though, 6% Derek White, and I know he's 7,800. I know it doesn't feel good to click that, but I think in large field tournaments he makes a ton of sense. I think he had like 4 blocks in the first half last night, which was insane. Like not something you could ever rely on. But this guy is hitting all his shots. The defense is always focused on Jalen Tatum ahead of him. I know Tatum's out tonight, but it's not like Sacramento's some defensive stalwart or anything. So I really like Derek White as a tournament play on DK. I consider him like a low risk cash type play on FanDuel. Probably my favorite Celtic, even more than Jaylen Brown, given the discount we're getting.
Yeah, no, I like that call a lot, and I agree. The 7,800 price on DraftKings, it's a little bit tougher to get to.
Yeah.
I think I got a few shares on the main slate, and then if you're playing the night slate,
Mhm.
7,800 Derek White, he's probably going to be a big part of my exposures. But that price on FanDuel, it's definitely too cheap, and so big fan of Derek White tonight. You mentioned Drew Holiday, and yeah, he's been bad, and we're not really getting an ownership discount anywhere.
Right.
He's actually higher owned on DraftKings at the lower price. He's cheaper
Both
over on
sides.
FanDuel too.
Yeah, he's higher on both sides. But yeah, I mean, I'm fine playing both, but honestly, if I could only have one, it's definitely White.
And then guy right in this price range, someone we've been talking about every slate who
I know
has
where you're going.
actually not let us down yet. Kobe
Kobe
White.
White.
I
Yep.
mean, I think the models around the industry are finally starting to adjust, and
Slowly. Yeah.
even ours. Like I'm not sure Kobe White's shown up on the first page like this before, but I mean, we're going right back to him, right?
Hell yeah. Yeah. He's been awesome, man. And the thing is, not only are the models slow to adjust, the pricing algorithms are slow to adjust. I feel like he's been floating at 8K, like 79 to 84 every single game. And I mean, he's constantly over 40 fantasy points. We know he has a 50 fantasy point ceiling. There's a lot of decent plays in that range, but I mean, he's somehow been the most consistent, which is crazy to say out loud. But I love him here. Again, Lakers, pretty good defensive team, but that's more so in the front court. I think guards can have success here, and if this game's going to stay close, which I think it does on the road in Chicago, a big part of that's going to be Kobe White here. So we'll talk about DeRozan when we get to forwards. I think he's solid here as well, but Kobe White, man, good call and not very popular tonight. 10% on DK, 3% on FanDuel. Really, really solid tournament option.
I mean, over the last 2 weeks, he's probably been the most frequent guy near the top of tournaments just because his ownership's coming in low every day. And so, I mean, he's doing it against the Heat. He's done it against everyone. So I don't think matchup really matters. Like, it's his team now, as weird as that is. I mean, he's probably going to get a max contract now, which I would not have thought he was before this season.
No, it's awesome. Happy
And
for him.
just to get back to these Celtics real quick, I was pulling up the on-off court numbers. When Jason Tatum is off the court, the biggest beneficiary is by far Derek White.
Mm.
Porzingis is second, but yeah. So I think it solidifies that we're going to be very interested in Derek White, even at that high price tag and low ownership over on DraftKings.
Oh yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean, looking through, like, there's a lot of good guards. I think the Craig Porter chalk is going to be tough to avoid if Mitchell's out. Again, I'm going to get to a lot of Mitchell if he's in. But yeah, value is tricky tonight. I don't think there's much like on the cheap end. I always bring him up, and I know everyone cringes, but Mike Conley, I mean, he's the one guy who I think he's always going to get 30 fantasy points every single time. Like, so if you're trying to pay down a guard and you don't get Craig Porter, I think he makes sense. Again, it's rare we get a ceiling out of him. Not a great matchup against Philly, but at the same time, I mean, I trust him more than any of the other guards in this range. We do have Malik Monk questionable, which is a little bit interesting to me. It's been tough to trust Kevin Herter at all at any point, but I think if Monk's out at his price, floating around 5K, he's going to make a lot of sense in that range as well. But until that Porter chalk opens up, it's tough to find value at guard, which is why I think like paying down at center makes a lot of sense. And we talked about a lot of guards in like the mid to high range we like a lot, but yeah, value's kind of scarce.
I mean, even sorting the model by DK value, we have two guys under 6K, D'Anthony Melton and Buddy Hield, but then Jalen Brunson, Drew Holiday, Luca, Tyrese Halliburton, Jalen Brown. And Jalen Brown's going to be a pretty phenomenal play, too, against Sacramento. I know he's priced up on DraftKings, but
Oh
no
yeah, I
Jason
love
Tatum. Like, I mean, he should get up 20-plus shots tonight. And then just, yeah, in terms of other guys, like even in this mid range, like Dennis Schroeder's been pretty popular lately. Kelly Oubre is pulling some ownership against Minnesota. 30% on FanDuel, 5,200. That seems kind of extreme, but I
that's
kind of get
extreme.
it.
Yeah, yeah. One guy I'll bring up too, kind of in between those two ranges, is Colin Sexton. his former team here, if you like to buy into revenge narratives. But the
Mm.
bigger thing is there's still no Keontae George, still no Jordan Clarkson. I know Markkinen's back, but he is still running that offense, getting plenty of minutes. His price really hasn't moved. And kind of similar to Kobe White, he's consistently hitting value even though he's priced up. So I like Colin Sexton a lot on both sides tonight. I think if you can't get up to those guys we like in the 8K range, he's going to make a lot of sense here again as well, even in a tough matchup.
And going right off Colin Sexton, Talon Horton Tucker,
Mm,
they have basically the same value rating on DraftKings, exactly the same, essentially the same on FanDuel. THT is a little bit cheaper, coming in at lower ownership. We are going to prefer Colin Sexton. He has a higher OF index, and points per dollar, they're the same. And Colin Sexton, I think we can just, his minutes are a little bit more secure. THT has a tendency to get benched if he's playing poorly, but he's been pretty fantastic lately. And at this low ownership, I mean, we have him projected for 27 and a half minutes. It's not bad. He could play a few more. And then, so we just got the news. Donovan Mitchell ruled out.
oh, yep, there it is. He's out. Okay, so yeah, let's backtrack a little bit. So yeah, Craig Porter becomes almost a lock. Craig Porter Jr. That is. Not only is Mitchell out, Darius Garland's also out. It's a paced up matchup. It's a matchup he should be able to thrive in. They've already announced that he's going to start here. So he checks all the boxes. I think this also brings Levert into play. I think he was already drawing some ownership. Kind of inconsistent minutes for him lately, but I do think he has to get over 30 here. Struess is someone we'll probably talk about when we get the forwards, but I really, really like Porter. I think he's a borderline lock. Again, there's no other value at guard we feel good about. And then, yeah, Levert's going to look pretty interesting. I did notice Sam Merrill got a little bit of extra run last night. I think he had over
Mm-hmm.
30 fantasy points. So
Yeah.
if you're really kind of dumpster diving, I don't think that's a crazy play. But Porter is now a core play everywhere without hesitation.
Yeah, it seems like every slate recently, I'm having a guy basically 100% in my exposures, and I have no problem playing 100% of Craig Porter. It's just they kind of have to play him. I mean, they can run Karis LeVert at the point for some time, but when Craig Porter got the minutes, he was fantastic. Even in low minutes, he was pretty great fantasy
He's
point per
awesome.
minute guy. And then you mentioned Sam Merrill. This is
That's
hilarious.
weird. Yeah, I know. Well, like I was watching the game last night, and like I forget who I was. I had Mitchell, or the last game they played. I was heavy on Mitchell. The field was under on him for some reason. But yeah, Merrill was the one hitting all the shots. So I was like, damn, I guess I got to keep an eye on this kid because not someone. I think he's a former Buck, right? Not someone I'm ever all that excited to be getting to. But I mean, they're thin in the backcourt. If he's gonna get run, he's cheap. Um, as a tournament play, I don't hate it.
And I love DraftKings note here. Merrill came up from out of nowhere to score a season high 19 points, and
Yeah.
I didn't even realize this, but he played over Karis LeVert in overtime.
Yeah, he was
And
just on
so,
fire. Yeah, I don't know that that repeats today, but I don't know that it matters. I think they're both going to be relied on again. And this is a good matchup too. Like sometimes we get these value pieces, and they go up against like a great defense, like Boston or I don't know Timberwolves, whatever. This is not that. This is a situation where everyone here should be able to thrive as long as they're getting minutes.
and because they're priced similar, I just want to make it clear: Sam Merrill is not a pivot off of Craig Porter.
Mm-mm.
I don't think anyone's a pivot off of Craig Porter. I
No,
mean, if you want to fade him, that's okay. But it just he's going to be the one with the ball in his hands. Sam Merrill, I know he's listed as a point guard on FanDuel, but let's be real here. It's going to be the Craig Porter and Karis LeVert, Max Struess running the offense tonight. Sam Merrill's going to get there if he hits a bunch of threes. So Craig Porter, yeah, I think that's the first guy that we're going to start our builds with tonight. But
totally agree.
let's wait a few minutes and see the model refresh to see Craig Porter's name at the top of value. Before we move on to forwards, is there anyone else that you wanted to mention?
Um, let's see here. I mean, we're getting a ton of Porter now. I'm still going to be getting to a lot of the Celtics. Harden if Paul's out, or Paul George, that is. We already talked about Kobe White. I mean, there's other plays like I don't know. The ownership is going to be kind of concentrated on these guys, so you're going to
Mhm.
get Trey Young at like sub 5%, Tyrese Halliburton, De'Aaron Fox in that late game. If you're playing a lot of Celtics, makes sense as a run back. Like, there's no one play from this group that really stands out, but I do think it's worth mentioning. If you're sorting by OF index, you see these guys sub 5%, and they're towards the top of the model. That means they're good tournament plays. Probably don't want to get there in cash. Most people aren't going to be paying up to be contrarian in that way, but I think it does make sense to maybe mix in some of these guys into your tournament builds. But yeah, who's going to be surprised if Trey Young or Halliburton has a huge game? I don't think anybody. It's just tough to get to them over someone like Luca or Craig Porter now. And yeah, most of my builds honestly are going to have Luka, Craig Porter, Derek White, probably some Drew mixed in. But yeah, if you want to get different, there's plenty of ways to do it.
Oh, I love it. That was a really good summary. Let's
Let's
move on to small forward, power forward, and I want to start with value here. I want to see who's number one on FanDuel value. All right, I'm pretty happy it's not Sam Hauser because it's not a guy I'm ever excited about playing. He's actually not even on the first page here. But since
yeah.
Boston's a big piece today, Sam Hauser is expected to start. He's only 4,200 on FanDuel. Someone asked if he is a trap. What do you think?
I mean, for him to be a trap, he'd have to be popular. What's his ownership right now? I mean,
27.
27%. He
Yeah.
might be a trap.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to answer your question, maybe slash yes. I think if he starts, he is going to be appealing. I am seeing one projected lineup that has Lamar Stevens starting. Um, I don't. I think it's more likely to be Hauser, honestly. But yeah, I don't mind him as a tournament play, but at 27%, he's definitely overowned. We're getting some of that value from Cleveland now, so hopefully that ownership comes down a bit. But yeah, you're not paying 5,300 for him on DK, 4,200 on FanDuel. He's a pretty good play, like in a vacuum, but at that ownership in tournaments, I think he's very easy to get away from. He's a guy who relies on his shot going in. If it doesn't, his floor is pretty likely. So yeah, I'm fine getting to Sam Hauser, but if you want to get different, that's probably the first place I'd be doing it. Easily one of the, or excuse me, one of the better pieces of chalk to fade. Like I don't want to fade Craig Porter. Like I don't want to fade Derek White. There's a few other very popular guys I don't want to fade. Sam Hauser is one I'm pretty comfortable getting away from.
I will say if like let's say you're down to your last position in at small forward on FanDuel, you have 42, 4,300. I don't think you have to like stretch yourself. You can play Sam Hauser, but I do
Yeah.
agree that he's a little bit overowned. But
Mhm.
also at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if he puts up 20 fantasy points in the first half and I just say, of
Right.
course, you know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like he's a good play on paper in this situation, but at his ownership and the likelihood that he's going to hit value, he's probably not a good tournament play. So again, it's process over results. If Sam Hauser hits 8 threes tonight and you don't play him, you're going to feel terrible about it. But at the same time, I don't think that's super likely. So yeah, you just kind of have to almost be like, what's the word? There's like a phrase. It's like process oriented instead of results oriented, and yeah, this is a good example of that. Like we had DeAndre Jordan earlier in the year. I was like, I'm not playing DeAndre Jordan. He sucks, and he went for 50 points. I felt terrible that night. But like as the weeks wore on, like and the more I think back to that night, I'm like, honestly, like if that's like came up again, I'm fine making that mistake because I'd rather not play popular guys that are not great at basketball most of the time.
And it's like, so Tatum is out, but they still have Derek White and Jalen Brown, who are monster usage players. Kristaps is a high usage player, and then Drew Holiday. I don't think he's been a monster usage guy this year, but he's also there. And so, yeah, Sam Hauser really just has to hit threes, get a bunch of rebounds. We haven't projected for 26 minutes, and the model is saying that he is bad value. I mean, 10.3 value score compared to the rest of the FanDuel value we have at forward today. It's just at 4,200. It's not good. And then on that question earlier about sorting by price or position, I mean, if we move the FanDuel slider to 4,500, I mean, Sam Hauser is number three, I guess, but I don't know that we necessarily have to go this cheap on FanDuel, especially we're already going to get Craig Porter. We'll see if we have any other pieces of value pop up too.
Yeah, again, we have Powell as a forward, a few other cheap centers. So, yeah, I don't know. Like if you're playing 150 lineups, you could put them in like 10%, chop the field in half, something like that. But yeah, I wouldn't want to match or be over the field.
And Nick, you've been doing pretty well in small field GPPs on FanDuel. Glenn in the chat, small field on FanDuel. Are we still fading Sam Hauser?
I mean, it kind of depends on the rest of your build. Like you said, if you have an awesome build, you get Luke in there, you got Porter, you got Jared Allen, like a bunch of guys you feel great about. You somehow get Kawhi in there, and he's like the last piece to make it work. I'd say fine, just play him. But yeah, it's the last piece in. Like when you're building, and I'm hand building in these single entry tournaments. I'm getting into plays I like first, and it's very easy to not land on a Sam Hauser when you're building that way. So yeah, I'd say I don't know. I just know the second I say fade, he's going to hit 10 threes, but I
Mhm.
think he's more of a fade
Yeah.
than a play here at that ownership, if that makes
No,
sense. But
I
yeah,
completely agree.
yeah, and you could hedge it too. I mean, like say you play like a $50 single entry, and you have a couple smaller stuff and like some 100 mans, maybe play him in 100 man, or I don't know, play him in the $2. I don't know, like hedge your bets. Like you don't always have to put all your money into one lineup. Like one thing I like to do, I build a lineup I love and then I make small variations of it. To kind of hedge the night. So like if one thing goes wrong, I'm not ruined. But like tonight, I probably will have like 100% Craig Porter. I'll probably be very heavy on Luca. But someone like Sam Hauser, like I'll have him in a lineup or two out of 20 maybe. And if he goes off, great. But it's not like he's going to kill you because there are other options in that range that do have similar upside.
And I mean, starting by FanDuel value, Kristaps is a number one FanDuel value, projected for 32 minutes, 15% ownership. Yeah, I mean, he's twice the price of Sam Hauser, but I think we can
Yeah.
just play some combination of the actual good players on Boston, Kristaps, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and I think we're okay.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Jaylen Brown's number 5. We have a question: is Julius Randle in play tonight? I mean, this is a guy that I'm willing to go over the field on basically every day until he's above 9K. 15% ownership on FanDuel, 18% on DraftKings. I think he's a little easier to fit on FanDuel just due to the way pricing works over there, 8,800. But going against your Brooklyn Nets, I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not a bad matchup for bigs. I do think Claxton's an underrated defender, but again, it's not like they're facing each other every possession. I think the one thing that's going to keep his ownership down is that Porzingis is right there. We also have
mhm.
Kawhi right there. But yeah, as a pivot off those guys, I'm surprised right now. Kawhi's sub 10% on both sites. Obviously, that's going to change if Paul George is out. But Randall, good play here for sure. You can definitely play Randall.
And on the other side of that game, I was pretty interested in Mikal Bridges coming down to 7,500, less than 10% ownership on each site. Talk to me about him.
Yeah, probably my favorite net play tonight if we're considering price. I know Cam Thomas has been shooting the ball better lately, but they're priced the same now. And Thomas is more scoring dependent than Mikal Bridges. Bridges does everything. Always going to play more minutes, always going to be in the closing lineup. We do see at times both Dinwiddie and Thomas get pulled from that closing lineup for defense in certain situations. You will never see Bridges pulled
Right.
from the closing lineup. So he has more secure minutes. And yeah, he shouldn't be 7,500. I know he's kind of been deferring to Cam. He's had a few floor games here. I think he got in foul trouble against Denver before that game blew out, so he didn't play many minutes there. But the pricing algorithm doesn't always take those things into account. They don't know when these guys are in foul trouble. They just know that Bridges had a few bad games this week. So now he's way below where he should be. And as much as I love Cam Thomas, I feel like he's a little more expensive than he should be. Dinwiddie's price is feeling a bit out of hand. So of all the Nets, I like Bridges the best today, and I can say that pretty confidently.
No, I agree. Yeah, Bridges was a big piece of my exposures on my pre-stream runs, and then
Nice.
there are so many forwards here that are kind of interesting. Like Tobias Harris at 4%, showing up near the top of the model. I don't know that he's necessarily a pivot off Kelly Oubre, but he's coming in at like what one eighth ownership on the same team, and Kelly's still going to play either way, even if Tobias is kind of going off. But that one kind of stands out to me at a higher OF index as well. I mean,
Yeah.
Derek Jones Jr. at 7% ownership, DeMar at 23 against the Lakers. We talk about how much we like Kobe White. DeMar is a fine play as well. Is there any other guys like I'm going to sort by ownership here? And I mean, should we be
Yeah.
interested in basically everyone here?
I mean, this is a really good position tonight, which is strange. It seems like usually forwards the thinnest. DK, Derek Jones Jr.'s ownership has come down a little bit, but at 5K flat, I think he's pretty tough to get away from. Um, Looks good on FanDuel as well, like you said, a lower ownership. Jabari Smith, he's interesting. He's kind of like the Mike Conley of forwards for me. Doesn't really have a super high ceiling, but he'll get you your 30 to 35 fantasy points. So as a last piece in, I don't mind him. I do think he's kind of overowned. But yeah, man, I mean, there is a lot to like here. Brandon Miller is still kind of interesting. I think PJ Washington's still out. Don't quote me on that. Double checking that right now. No, Washington's back, but yeah, I mean, I don't mind Miller on FanDuel. Probably not going to get to him on DK at 6,500 with Hayward and Washington back in the lineup, but he's been pretty good. But yeah, man, I mean, it's loaded. One guy I do want to bring up for sure is DeMar DeRozan. We talk about Kobe White. They're priced identically. They've both been producing pretty well. So yeah, I'm fine getting to DeRozan. Again, we probably prefer Kobe White if we're picking between the two, but the difference is there's a ton of guards that we've talked to that we really like a lot. And I mean, if you're going Luka and you're going Porter, it's going to be tough to play someone like Kobe White. So you could go DeMar DeRozan, and it's a very similar play, in my opinion, against the Lakers. I like him in that mid range. You mentioned Bridges. Just kind of going through everything quickly here. But yeah, just to highlight once again that Clippers situation. If Paul George is out, you're definitely going to want to get to some Kawhi, but that's pretty obvious, I think.
And so, hold on, I wanted to see if Craig Porter was reflected here because I wanted to see how much it affected. Like Max Strus was already pulling all the ownership, but I wanted to see how much it affected Karis LeVert.
Yeah.
We have Craig Porter at 28 minutes, and he is the top of value right now overall on both sites. Um, yeah, crazy DK value, and we only have him projected for 28 minutes. I think it's pretty tough to project him for more, but he definitely has the potential to play more than 28 minutes. The ownership's not updated. He's still showing 0%. He's going to be like 60 or 70 probably, which is insane on a 10-game slate.
It is. I'll be over it though.
Yeah. Um, and just one situation that I was thinking about, you mentioned PJ Washington for Charlotte. So Miles Bridges is back tonight, and they're playing Indiana. Remember, he was denied entry into Canada because
Mm,
of his legal situation. That's why PJ Washington was starting in chalk last time. That's why he's 1% on this time. He's probably going to come off the bench with Nick Richards still starting at the center spot. But it's something like I'm not sure if these sites are adjusting enough for teams playing against Indiana.
right.
247.5 total, and it seems like almost every time they play, like I can't remember who it was last time, but the two guys I played going against Indiana, was it Minnesota, and Cat and Anthony Edwards both went off. Um,
Yeah.
I played the wrong guys from that game, but either way, like the point is, good players do very well against Indiana, and I'm seeing Brandon Miller pull 33% ownership on FanDuel at 5,800, and it's kind of just been the same problem with him. Like I'm warming up to playing him more, but he still hasn't shown us that ceiling. Like he seems
Right.
pretty safe to get close to a 5x. But it's not really helping us win a tournament like
Yeah.
Terry Rozier would be if he went off. If Miles Bridges actually had a good game again in his life.
Yeah, man. I think Bridges is a good call, and I can't imagine he's very popular here. Definitely going to go overlooked, especially if Miller's super popular. I mean, that's direct leverage. So yeah, I'm fine with it. I mean, earlier in the year we were calling the Pacers the Coors Field of the NBA. So definitely want to continue to play good plays against them here. So I'm with it, man. I think Bridges is good. I think the price is just a little bit tough. It's tough to want to use that salary on him on DraftKings, but at the same time, you're getting him at like no ownership. 7,800 on FanDuel, a little bit more appealing, but it's a great matchup for him. And maybe he has a chip on his shoulder after getting shut out of Canada, even though it was pretty understandable. It was ridiculous. They like try to have that overturned the day of. It's like let's get him let into the country, even though he's a felony. Um, yeah, they should have probably tried that a few weeks earlier than the day of traveling. That was insane. But
Right? Like this is like millions of dollars worth of stuff, and I know it's Miles Bridges, whatever, but how was no one responsible enough to check ahead of time?
dude, I don't know, man. I mean, the Hornets have been kind of hysterical in that way. I don't know. It's just the NBA, man. It's like a soap opera every day. We get a story like this. I mean, we got the Ann Edwards thing playing out now. I mean, I don't know. Zion's getting DMs blasted on Twitter today. It's like it can't go one day. I know Wob. I don't know if you follow him. He has this meme he posts. It's like the NBA has gone 0 days without being overly dramatic, and he posts it every day. It's like, man,
Yeah.
yeah, it's insane. You would think these $1 million businesses, which is what these NBA teams are, would have a better grasp of travel and legality with the players on their teams. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And Thug a Thuggin, will we show the chalk on both sites? Yes. Give me a few minutes though, because I wanna refresh and see what Craig Porter comes in at for DraftKings. I mean, wow, there's actually no one. Is this correct? No one pulling. Do I have my setting? Like this is kind of weird. No one's above 30% on DraftKings. I know it's a big slate, but that's pretty unusual. Craig Porter is going to be way above it, but
Yeah, I think it's gonna slowly adjust. Porter's gonna climb. I'd be shocked if Levert honestly wasn't over 40% on DK once this refreshes. But again, I think it just takes some time. Um, yeah, we did just get the starting lineup: Porter, Struess, Okoro, Wade, Allen. So no surprises there. I did want to check Okoro's price. I know he's 5,100 on DK, which isn't great. FanDuel raised him too. He's actually been pretty good at a
yeah.
thin small forward position, but it looks like both sites raised his price, so he's going to be tougher to get to here. But fine getting to Levert off the bench. You mentioned Struz earlier, solid play as well. But yeah, I do think if you just wait like 5 minutes, we're going to see major changes in that ownership.
Yeah, I mean, Craig Porter's coming in right under 50%. Karis LeVert 40 on DraftKings, 30 on FanDuel.
There we go. Yeah, we're
I,
getting there.
I'm not worried about Karis LeVert coming off the bench. Like he's had this bench role most of the season, and he's been crushing some of the time.
Yep,
Um,
totally agree.
so we're getting there. And then just another guy I was kind of interested in seeing where his ownership ended up. Georges Niang, 4K flat on DraftKings, 41 on FanDuel, coming in at 21% ownership on DraftKings, but only 2% on FanDuel. I mean, if you want a high risk pivot off of Sam Hauser on FanDuel, it's Georges Niang, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's him or Merrill, but yeah, Niang fills the forward position. They're honestly very similar. Like they're both going to sit in the corner and shoot threes, even though they
Right,
play
right.
different positions. So I think you go with either of them and feel okay about it. I'm guessing Dean Wade ends up drawing some ownership. He's been better than expected, honestly. Never a guy I'm excited to play. But yeah, his price is up too. It's kind of similar to Okoro. I wouldn't be shocked if either of these guys got you 30 fantasy points, but it's not going to kill you not playing them. So I'm fine getting Yang at low ownership or Merrill. But yeah, obviously Porter's a guy here.
And in terms of groups, I don't mind mixing Niang and Merrill both in on FanDuel, especially. I do think I want to set a rule, play max one from this group, and add Niang and Merrill to it. I'm not sure I
Yeah.
care about what other combinations I get. Like maybe I don't want Craig Porter, Levert, and Struess in a lineup. Play max two of three.
hmm
But I don't think I want Niang and Merrill in a lineup. It's just, do we really expect both of them to go off in the same day? Especially if we're getting them at 2 and 3% ownership on FanDuel, it seems unnecessary.
Right. Yeah. It's like whoever's hot from three probably gets to close. If the game's close, it's not going to be both of them.
And then before we do centers real quick, Kevin Werder on FanDuel. So like Nick mentioned, if Malik Monk is out, Kevin Werder's a pretty good price on both sites, 5,400 and 5K. He's going to pull, his ownership will come up if Malik Monk is ruled out. Not that Malik Monk's pulling any ownership right now. Um,
Yeah, exactly. If Monk's out, I think you can go to Herder and feel pretty good about it. If Monk's in, you can still go to Herder at low ownership. It's just going to be kind of risky. But that is actually a decent game environment tonight. I know the Celtics are known as one of the best defensive teams in the league, but with no Tatum or Horford, it's a little bit softer. So I don't mind the matchup. But yeah, Herder's inconsistent. That's the only issue.
and these situations are so interesting to me because these Boston guys, like on FanDuel, I guess anyway, they're pulling. We got four guys at 24% or more ownership for Boston. On DraftKings, they're not pulling as much ownership because they're priced up. But Sacramento, not a single player. Like Malik Monk projected for 6% ownership. No one else is above two on either site. Like Trey Lyles 4% on DraftKings. But if we're playing 2-3 Boston guys, like doesn't it make sense to play a Sacramento guy? It's a what 5.5? It's a 3.5 point spread. Like it's going to be a close game. Um, I kind of want to try to mix in some more Sacramento guys. Who would be your preference, assuming Malik Monk is out, besides Werder?
Um, I mean, obviously Fox and Sabonis are the studs here. It's just, do you want to pay almost 10K for them when we have other guys on the slate that are probably more likely to go off? So let me go with Keegan Murray. Obviously, we're not going to expect him to hit up 10 threes or whatever the hell he did the other night. But it's funny. I don't know if you saw this interview with Mike Brown. Murray's been telling him that he can play in the
Yeah.
post. You saw it. and he had Jordan Poole on him, and he got in the post, and he made a nice little turnaround layup there. And he's like, you know what? I think I might give him a chance to post up a little bit more, which would only help Murray's usage.
Mhm.
Obviously, it was against Jordan Poole, but not only is he playing more in the post, he's also shooting the three better. So yeah, I'd feel better if Monk is out because it would probably help his usage, but no one's going to want to play Murray, and he's kind of in that weird price range that it's kind of hard to find something. So just below 7K on both sides, I think he's a pretty decent run back if you do want one.
And then let's go ahead and get into centers real quick, opening it up with Sword Baby. How do we feel about Kessler? So Kessler has been a lot more. I mean, he was back in the starting lineup, so that immediately has me very interested. For some reason, he got in the coach's bad side for a while.
Yeah.
32 minutes in the last game, though. I mean, he's been a stud if he stays on the court. And Cleveland, they're without Mobley, but they still have Jared Allen, so they have a need to play Kessler. I believe your at 7 was already ruled out.
hmm Yeah, I mean, he's not a bad play. I just think the issue is there's probably good or similar plays in that price range. Like for a few hundred more, if you can get to Jared Allen, I feel way better about Allen than I do Kessler. The thing with Kessler, though, is he does get a lot of blocks. He is pretty cheap on DK, where the blocks aren't as valued. But on FanDuel, we have seen massive scores out of him if he can get those stocks going. So yeah, in so few words, I think he's fine. He's a pretty good play here. But yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be playing Allen, Hartenstein, or trying to pay up. But yeah, no, he's fine. He's definitely in play, and I do agree with you. The fact that he's starting certainly makes me feel better about his minutes, which have been kind of fluctuating earlier in the season.
Yeah, that 7,800 price on FanDuel seems like a very deep GPP play, but the 6,200 price on DraftKings, I think we can fit that in pretty nicely, coming in at 5% ownership, especially. And then, I mean, sorting by value, I mean, he's like what, the 6, 7 center. After some of these other guys we've already talked about, we're pretty interested. And I mean, Kristaps at 3% on DraftKings is pretty interesting too. We like Julius Hartenstein. It's probably appropriate chalk, assuming he is starting.
Hmm.
And then who else are we looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Jared Allen. I think he's the best chalk here of it all. I do like Hardenstein as long as he's starting. Clint Capella against Houston. I mean, not the best matchup, but he's another guy who's seen more secure minutes lately. Earlier in the year, it was rare he'd get over 30. He's actually sharing the floor with the Congo at times. So I really do like Capella here once again. Maybe not the best matchup, but I don't know. I'm pretty comfortable getting to him there. Sengun on the other side, I think he is getting a little bit pricey on DK. Yeah, I mean, he's consistently hitting value or close to it. So I wouldn't mind either center from that game. Not a spot I really like Vooch, but if you want to call AD a center on DK, I think he's appealing here. No ownership on him. Really good matchup for Anthony Davis. And I know like this is a reach as far as the narrative goes, but wasn't there a time that he wanted to go to Chicago or he was somehow tied to Chicago? I don't know if he grew up there or what. Um, but yeah, I think in the past he's had some big games in this matchup, and Vooch tends to struggle against bigger centers, and that's what Davis is. So on DK, I like Davis. On FanDuel, he's tougher to get to, but he does have that power forward eligibility. But no one is playing him tonight, and it's tough not to like that upside. So
Yeah, it seems like there's no shortage of quality centers that we're interested in playing
yeah,
tonight.
like the payups are all low on Embiid, obviously. Joker, obviously. Um, yeah, I mean the thing with Porzingis, I am surprised he's so low owned. I will say the minutes have been limited. Like we haven't seen him get over 30 very often. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if that's an injury thing. I know they've been resting him on back to backs. He rested last night. I think he's underowned.
Yeah.
I say that with some hesitation, but it's a good matchup. Definitely going to see a boost in usage. He's affordable, so even if he only plays at 30 minutes, I think Porzingis is a really solid option. But,
And then there's one guy that just kind of stood out to me on ownership, Wendell Carter Jr. We talked about we didn't really like him. He's 5,400 and 5,200, pulling some pretty decent ownership considering how many center options we do have on the slate. But I will point out that in terms of DK value, the model doesn't love him, even projected for 26 minutes. And so, like, yeah, I'm still okay fading him. I didn't realize he was going to come in that popular, but the model's telling us that there's, 2 dozen better plays for the price. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. Again, it's first game back, which always gives you some pause. But even if he gets his normal run, he's matching up with Bam here, which is really not ideal.
and then let me just go ahead and sort this by ownership for it. Let me do one last refresh for a Thuggin. Let's see
Okay.
exactly where the chalk is ending up here.
Mhm.
Um, 81% for Craig Porter. And it's probably, I mean, I'm going to have 100, so I
Same.
think it's too low. It's
Levert's up there
insane.
too now,
Struce and Levert both still 50% on FanDuel as well.
and
I mean,
Merrill.
Merrill, George Niang, dude, like, what are we doing? Why do we play this game? This is dumb.
Yeah, this is a little bit goofy, man. Like I was excited to play Merrill as like a low on pivot. Maybe he is on FanDuel if that doesn't rise, but I mean, do we need 5 Cavs? I don't think so, man. I feel really good about Porter. I think you could play Levert and Struce together, but I think most builds you're better off with one or the other. But again, it is a good matchup, and I think that's the reason. Cleveland usually plays very slow. Utah plays quicker, not a good defense. So even if they were healthy, this would be a good spot for a lot of their players. So I think again they're just checking a lot of boxes, but this seems like a bit of an overreaction. I'm thinking things maybe mellow out a bit as we get closer to lock.
Yeah, there's no like Craig Porter, he's definitely going to come in mega owned. I don't think these guys are going to come in that high. Like they're going to come close, but this is insane. And it's
I
like,
I do
what are
want
we
to just
doing?
say I don't mean to cut you off, but Allen only 15% on DK. If all
Yeah,
these guys are that
yeah.
chalky, load up on Allen because we've
Mhm.
seen huge games out of him. I mean, I don't know. He has a kind of wide range of outcomes, but this is not a matchup you should be getting into foul trouble in. We've seen him capable of getting over 50 fantasy points, which at 7K would be really nice here. And if people are going to be playing Yang and Struce and Merrill in the same lineup without Allen, you can fade a few of those guys, play Jared Allen. You're getting double the leverage, which is always appealing.
And I will say this ownership difference between DraftKings and FanDuel for Merrill and Niang is actually insane. Merrill, I get more because he's only point guard eligible in FanDuel. I'm not sure I really want to take up a point guard spot with him, but George Niang, like we can play him in the power forward spot, and he's pulling no ownership, and he's pretty cheap. We've seen him get minutes, we've seen him do well. Especially, it's not just Mitchell out; it's Mobley out too.
Hmm. Yeah, they're like I said, they're different positions, but almost the same players. So yeah, just play the lower owned guy if you can.
This is bizarre, man. Well, let's try and build a dummy. So we're gonna
Yeah,
plug
let's
in
do it.
Craig Porter Jr. as the first player in there. What other Portland guys you want to plug in? Jared Allen at center.
Yeah, let's go Allen, and then I think we do one of Levert or Struess. I'm fine either way.
Um, let's start with Levert and just let me see what
Okay.
have his minutes been like recently.
Well, he missed that.
27,
Yeah,
25.
he lost out on that closing run because of. I just go Levert. I like Levert.
Yeah, I mean he played 35 a few games ago, so I don't think we have to worry about him being restricted anymore. Sounds like
Hmm.
he's good to go.
Yeah.
Um, who else? Who's the next guy? And not Cleveland Cav. Do you want to try to fit in a Utah guy, or
Uh, I mean, I
I
like
don't?
Sexton a lot. The
You want
price
to come?
isn't.
You want to come back to it?
Yeah, let's come
See if it
back
fits
to it. I don't
together.
know that, like, on a 10-game slate, I don't know that the runbacks are as vital.
Especially when these guys are. I mean, yeah, Jared Allen's 7K, but these guys are still fairly cheap. And either way, they all have to play heavy minutes. Boston
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
Do you want to go with Derek White over on DraftKings?
Yeah, I know
Jalen
he's
Green.
overpriced there, but I think we do. Let's go Derek White. It's going to be one of
Derek.
him or Brown, so.
All right, let's do Derek White, and then maybe we'll come back see if we can fit in that 3% on Porzingis. Now, from these are the two games I think that we should be most interested. The two teams, anyway. It's definitely Boston and Cleveland. Outside of these games, what players are we looking at?
I mean, before we had the Cleveland news, Derek Jones Jr. was like 50% owned on DK. I think at
I like it.
5K on DK, he makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, let's get Derek Jones Jr. in there against the Clippers.
Mhm.
We're not going to be able to fit in Luca in this build. It doesn't look like, but
Could
I
go
mean,
Hartenstein at utility, or, yeah, I don't mind that.
Hartenstein. Let's see, 5,800 seems like a great play. Leaves us 6,900 for power forward and forward. I mean, that's pretty solid. So the court
Hmm.
today, this is pretty chalky. I don't think Derek Jones Jr. is too chalky. Derek White's coming in low owned, but there's
Allen,
definitely enough other. Yeah, Allen. Like, there's enough other low owned guys we can mix in that like we're perfectly happy running this lineup in the biggest contests.
I like it a lot. Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I don't know that we have to like fill these last two spots in, but in terms of our favorite
Yeah, who's in
forward,
that range, I guess, just so we can give an idea. But yeah.
maybe we could plug in Porzingis, 5,600.
Oh, yeah. What is that? 56 at forward?
Yeah, 5,600 at the forward position. I mean, Bruce Brown, Prince, Fontecchio, Obi Toppin. It's all kind of ugly.
Yeesh. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but
Uh,
you guys play with it, and
yeah, yeah, you can figure it out from there. I mean,
it's a pretty strong tournament core.
definitely.
All right, so appreciate you guys watching today. Discord live. Jayhawk is live in there right now, and we'll be back tomorrow. Nick, do you have any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I'll just keep an eye on that Paul George news, or leave yourself some room to pivot. You're going to want to get to some Kawhi and Harden if he's out. I think the other day when that unfolded, not everyone was ready to make that pivot. So yeah, just keep an eye on that. Otherwise, let's crush it tonight.
All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Appreciate you for watching. Thanks.